Titanosaurus, I would ask what you were doing, but just tell me.
I'm trying to get young viewers to get attracted to our channel, you know, with that Thomas the Dank Engine meme.
Titanosaurus, the whole point of this channel is to talk about retro stuff, not current generation memes.
Besides, Titanosaurus, the Thomas the Dank Engine meme died out a long time ago.
Yes, that too. Thank you, Nala.
You actually thanked me. Maybe you do actually like me.
Don't push it, Nala. But, Titanosaurus, you actually did give me a good idea. Well, why not I do talk about the old Thomas the Tank Engine, and not that dumb CGI current-gen Thomas.
Yeah, right. Why would a young kid want to watch the old Thomas the Tank Engine? The old Thomas the Tank Engine is stupid!
Titanosaurus, what have you done? You are back in the old school. Hey guys, I'm the Retro Reject, and today we're doing something a little bit different. Basically, I'm starting a new series where basically I look back on old cartoons and TV shows that I remember loving from my childhood and just reintroducing it back out there into the internet. And, well, today we're going to be talking about Thomas the Tank Engine. Wait a minute, Retro Reject. Thomas the Tank Engine isn't retro. Well, Mr. Reaction of the audience, to me it is retro, because the Thomas series that I grew up with, it is nothing like what they're putting out today. So how this is going to work is basically, first I'm going to tell you the whole story of how the series came to be, and then after that I'm going to explain, well, what my experience was from my childhood, and like what kind of memoirs I still have from Thomas the Tank Engine. And then after that, then I'm going to explain at least 1 or 2 episodes, but for Thomas the Tank Engine, I'm going to only explain 1. So, without any further ado, let's get on with it! Alright. No spinny chair. I wish you spinny chair! So way back around during the 1930s and 40s, a man named the Reverend W. Audrey had a son who was sick with the measles, because that was a big thing at the time. And since his son was sick, he needed to tell him stories to amuse him, trying to forget about his sickness. And these stories were naturally about trains, because the Reverend's father came from a railroad background. And these stories were so entertaining that basically the Reverend's family, they wanted him to make a book series off this, because, I mean, why not? And, well, he did. In the 1940s, he actually made the first Thomas the Tank Engine book. And after that, more stories just kept coming and coming and coming. And these stories rose in popularity so much. And in the 1980s, they made the first original Thomas the Tank Engine series, and it just blew up in popularity. Now, the original series was definitely nothing like what we have now. There was no CGI. All they had were toy trains, and, you know, like little model electric trains. I wish I had an example to show you, but I used to have, like, old electric Thomas the Tank Engine trains, but I no longer have those anymore. And basically, they only had one simple face, like showing expression, like if Thomas the Tank Engine was happy, he was happy, and if he was sad, he was sad. And also, there were no voice actors for the series. There was only one person in charge for giving the voices for all the engines and the narration. And the people who actually did the narration, you would not believe who they are. The first person to narrate Thomas the Tank Engine was Ringo Starr. Yes, the Ringo Starr, the drummer for the Beatles. And he was mainly the narrator for the British release of Thomas the Tank Engine, but some of his narration did cross over into the US release. But the main person who was in the US release of Thomas the Tank Engine was George Carlin. He was a renowned comedian for his time, and he was well known for being an appropriate comedist and an inappropriate comedist. And the third person was Alec Baldwin, yes, the actor that's around today. He also starred in Thomas the Tank Engine's first movie, Thomas and the Magic Railroad, but I'll get to that in a little bit. I mean, it was just like that. That a simple story that was told by a man to his son eventually became the world-renowned television series that is still going on today, and I just can't believe it. And in fact, I actually have some VHS tapes from my childhood from Thomas. And if you didn't know, little kids out there, these things were made before DVDs. So I'm sorry because I only have like 2 VHS tapes that have like box covers for it, so you could tell what VHS you're looking at. But just take my word for it. This one is Thomas's Snowy Adventure. It was kind of like the Christmas special for Thomas. This one is The Best of Percy. He was like one of my favorite Thomas the Tank Engine characters. Best of Thomas, of course. Well, I mean, you can't have a best of... I don't know what I'm saying. Best of James, and he's another character. I have like a whole bunch of like toy trains, so I'm gonna introduce like my old childhood toys, and I'll explain who some of these people are. Salty Secret, it's another one. Percy's Chocolate Crunch, that's another one. Thomas Meets the Queen, Thomas and Friends. And James and the Red Balloon. And also, I also have the Thomas and the Magic Railroad movie. I don't know if you can tell until I'll probably get closer. This person right here, that's Alec Baldwin, if you didn't know. So, yeah, so that's pretty much the movies and episodes.
Alright, so now moving on to the toy section of this cartoon synopsis, basically. Alright, so this is Thomas the Tank Engine. If you couldn't tell, I mean, he's number 1, why not? And, I mean, you couldn't have Thomas the Tank Engine toys without having Thomas the Tank Engine. So these toys were mainly made out of wood, and they come on like these little plastic rails. They just go back and forth. And these right here were the magnets, which you would stick on like other things to it. Like I have an example here. So this is a coach. So I don't know if this is the right end. Nope, that's the wrong end. An entertainment. All right. So this is the right end, so basically you would stick it to the back of that, and if you heard the click, basically then it would just stick to the back and you could roll them back and forth. And, I mean, you could go crazy elaborate if you had enough of these little track pieces of, like, making the whole island of Sodor. And if you didn't know what the island of Sodor is, too bad for you, but, okay, I'm not going to be that mean. So the island of Sodor is the place where Thomas and his friends basically live. Alright, so I think that's enough for Thomas. Alright, before I go on to the other my other Thomas the Tank Engine characters, so just let me explain. Of course, these are like easily attachable railroad tracks. So how you detach them and like connect them is you see these two little dots here? So you kind of push on this end and they basically kind of detach. And all you have to do is kind of put these ends together. And once again, the click tells you that they're connected. Alright, so enough of that, so let's go on with another friend. Alright, so this is Edward. He's the number 2 engine on the island of Sodor. And by like his character design, he is like the oldest like train on the island of Sodor. He's number 2. Did I say that already? Who cares? And also, sorry if they look like so weird, especially because since Edward looks like he's missing his eyebrows. It's just because, remember, these are my old childhood toys, so, I mean, these things got beat up because the crazy adventures I went on with them. Unlike now with having Titanosaurus, Mechagodzilla, Nala, those guys. So, this is Henry. Now, you're probably wondering, Retro Reject, where the heck is this? And these are my childhood toys. Stop bothering me. Things get lost. Alright, so this is Henry. He's the number 3 engine on the island of Sodor. And an interesting thing about Henry's character from the show was that he was when he was first introduced, he was like, he got sick a lot, like, because he was having, like, engine problems. And they eventually had to give Henry, like, a different type of coal so that he would run properly until like, a crash happened in the series, which he was pulling a train, and he crashed, and they had to make him into a new shape. But, you can't really tell the difference, because, I mean, because there is a difference between, the old Henry and the new Henry. So, old Henry, I think he would basically kind of look like this, because I don't know. And new Henry, the main difference with new Henry would be that there would be like some little green triangles, Illuminati, little green triangles, right like around here. All right, so this is Gordon. He's number 4. We're on the island of Sodor, and I know what you're gonna say. Retro reject. What did I say before? Don't bug me. Childhood toys. Get it. Alright. So this is Gordon. I mean, he is the fastest engine on the island of Sodor. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it about him. Okay, remember that guy I mentioned before, James? This is him. And to be honest, he is definitely, like, probably one of my favorite trains. Because when I was a child, I really liked James, because I mean, just he was, like, different from, like, all the other engines. And, of course, from the paint job of him being red. And, to be honest, his personality, I don't understand why I liked him as a child. He's very self-arrogant, like, he's always full of himself. Because he is so different from the other engines. But, I don't know, I still love him. And he's number 5. And number 6 is Little Percy. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing a lot about Percy. I mean, he is more of like the kind of a goofball on the island of Sodor, but he still is responsible. Well, and he stars in like a lot of like crash episodes. Like he gets in a lot of wrecks a lot. Like one time he plunged himself into the ocean. Another time he ran into like some kind of cart and he got covered in like white powder, and he scared Thomas by pretending that he was a ghost. Yeah, but he's still one of my favorite engines. Alright, so this is Toby, and he's number 7. He's one of the most different looking members of the island of Sodor. He's a tram engine, and he starred in like a episode out of like Thomas actually gotten himself in trouble with the police, and so because he had like cow catchers, or whenever he was on the line, so the police thought he would endanger animals, because since he didn't have cow catchers, so they brought Toby in to do that kind of job, and be safe. Alright, so Salty is another character I mentioned before, but I didn't really give any clues of who he was, but this is Salty. He is a diesel engine, not like Thomas and Friends. He is a diesel engine like the trains that you would see nowadays, except in England they still use steam trains. And so Salty, he works by like the docks, like over there. And he's a very, well, as his name implies, he's like very salty, and he talks in like a pirate Irish accent. I don't know like what it is. It's like, "Arg me mateys," and all that other stuff. Alright, so this is the last guy I'm gonna show. This is Diesel. Yeah, very original name. Once again, he is a diesel engine. He was more introduced, like, not at the first of the series. Well, actually, I think he was. He was introduced around the 2nd season. And, I mean, nothing much more to him. I mean, he's more of, like, the bad guy of the series. Because, I mean, England, they still, like I said, they still use steam trains. And, like, diesel engines, they're a lot more cheaper to work, and I guess they just wanted to show the taking over of diesel. Alright, so one more guy to introduce. So this is Golden Thomas. He was part of the 60-year anniversary of Thomas the Tank Engine. And he's not actually made out of gold. He's just wood that's painted gold. Well, and I just thought it was interesting to show you guys.
Now, a lot of people do ask me, like, who is my favorite Thomas the Tank Engine character?
Nobody ever asked you that question.
Tyrannosaurus, I didn't ask for your opinion.
In fact, if anything, fans would ask you if you like Nala. Oh, come on, he does. He's just trying to hide it.
Stop it, Nala. Jeez. Anyway, my favorite Thomas the Tank Engine character is actually a guy called Stepney. I wish I had a toy to show you guys who he was, but actually, for the episode that I'm gonna explain, it's an episode that involves Stepney in it. So the episode I'm gonna explain is called Thomas and Stepney. So one day, Thomas is running along his branch line, and he runs into Percy, and he's like, "Oh, my branch line is like the best thing in the world." And well, Percy's like, "Well, Thomas, there is actually another engine who has a more famous branch line." And, well, Thomas starts to get a little bit jealous. You know, it's because he thinks he's the only #1 engine. And it turns out the engine who is famous is Stepney. And he runs the Blue Belt Railway, which actually is a real railway that actually runs in England. And who has a train that basically looks like Stepney. And also another fun fact, a lot of the trains that you see in Thomas the Tank Engine actually are based on real engines. But Stepney is a little bit sad, considering that the Blue Railway isn't really a long railway, so he can't really go out and just run for a long time. So one day, he and his driver decide to go to the island of Sodor, and once he gets there, everybody treats him like he's the best thing since sliced bread. And that just gets Thomas a little more jealous of Stepney. And one day after he worked at the docks, a man ordered for a special train, and Stepney was the train to take it. And once Thomas saw that, because he was shunted from his own line to a siding for Stepney to pass, so the next day, Stepney meets Thomas, and Stepney, he admitted that he was a little bit worried because he didn't really know the line, and he just really didn't feel that important when taking it. And Thomas understood him, and that they can relate to each other. And basically, they both became friends after that. So, what I got from the story was that a person may be important, but everybody can deal with the same problems every once in a while, which makes us all the same in some way. And that's just the beauty of Thomas the Tank Engine. It hides good moral lessons under a whole train show, basically. And that's why I consider it one of my favorite childhood shows. Well, I think that's it. So, remember guys, like, comment, subscribe, whatever the heck you want to do, and the old school is out!